We made it to the finish line. Today we're talking about episode 10, the season finale of The Morning Show. What did I think about the episode? What did I think of the season? And what do I hope to see in season 2? Well, we're going to talk about that and much more. Episode 10 of The Morning Show is titled The Interview. The Morning Show faces a fateful day as a plan to shake up UBA is set in motion. What's going on, everybody? Elliot back again with my last review for season 1 of The Morning Show. And boy, episode 10 gave us a really good finale, in my opinion. I'm going to share my thoughts in a bit here in my spoiler discussion. Before we dive into this review here, definitely consider subscribing to my channel. Hit that bell so you can stay up to date with all my other Apple TV Plus show reviews, my other TV reviews, movie reviews, and all the fun things we do on this channel. And if and when you've seen this finale of The Morning Show, I want to know what you all thought of that tragic ending for Hannah. What now for Mitch? What now with Fred? I want to know all your thoughts, your comments, your concerns, your theories for season 2 in the comments below. Let's have some fun discussions down there. So let's break it down. So as I've been doing in all my 9 other reviews, I break down the episode. I talk about what I thought of those moments. And then at the end of this review, I'm going to talk about the episode, the season as a whole. And I'm going to give you all my thoughts of what I hope to see in season 2. So let's break down the episode first and let's jump right into it. So it starts off with Yanko having a drink at the bar and pretty much setting in motion what we're expecting to see in this episode. And that is a storm is right on the horizon. And let's jump into what we get from there on out. So we see Mitch meeting with Chip and Corey and Bradley, and Mitch is telling them, that I have witness, and that he just goes out and flat out says he has Hannah as a witness, and obviously Chip and everyone and Bradley are shocked about that, and they ask to kind of go in detail, and, Mitch does his Mitch thing where he says, he was kind of, used, and Hannah used him for a position, and that's where, like, Bradley and, obviously, Chip and them are like, really? She used you? So, they're setting that all in motion there. At the same time, we see Alex meeting with Marlon, who's going to be taking up the position of Chip, which we'll be talking about here in a little bit. So very early on, we're seeing the ball getting rolling on both sides of the party about, everything going on with Fred and Mitch, and then obviously what's going on with Alex and Fred. So everything's really starting to get in motion. And again, we got some stuff to talk about. So we see Maggie meets with Fred. As we knew from last week, Maggie told Chip that she was going to meet with Fred and kind of give him a heads up per se, and not necessarily, as she says in this speech, she doesn't want to necessarily stab him in the back. She wants to tell him up front what she's going to do in the story. And, Fred obviously doesn't want this to happen, but there's really nothing he can do. She's going to continue to move on with her story in this investigation, which they didn't really touch on it too much in this episode, but I imagine Maggie's going to be a pretty big presence season 2 in regards to these allegations on Fred, and probably play into what's going to happen to him and maybe losing the network, or who knows what's going to happen in season 2. But Maggie's definitely going to be a big pivotal character, as I imagine. See, Fred gets a call. He calls Vicky to let her know that he wants the investigation to end so he can make himself look better in the long run. From there, we get some awkward exchanges between Bradley and Alex and Chip. We see Hannah gets a text from Maggie, but at that very moment, she also gets a phone call from the upper people at UBA saying that they would like her to interview for an HR position in LA. So at that point, I'm like, oh, Hannah might have a somewhat of a happy ending. She might just leave this behind, do what she has to do now and take this position in LA. But we know what happens to Hannah, and we'll talk about that in a bit here. But it was interesting that she gets that phone call, after she gets the text from Maggie, and it kind of sets in motion again that they're trying to push her out of the situation, whether it be Fred or the higher ups, knowing that she's a liability. So they're trying to get her out of New York. So from there, in the meantime, we get a very cool moment between people saying hi, and we see that these people are kind of just saying hi to each other's faces, but we know they all have information on one another. Like we see Bradley wanting to meet with Hannah. We see Alex and Daniel kind of having a little conversation about Daniel taking over Bradley's position, and again, we just see all this stuff happening before they go live. So it kind of just shows you the temperature in the room and kind of the backstabbing and kind of all the stuff that we've built up to in this season finale. So from there, we get the meeting between Bradley and Hannah, because again, Hannah Bradley had told Hannah the scene before that she wants to meet with her. Hannah, Bradley tells her that I'm going to be interviewing Mitch. I'm going to be bringing him onto the network, and, he told me what happened. So from there, Hannah essentially confronts her and tells her she doesn't feel like she wants to do, she doesn't want to be used as a tool. And this, I think, is a very interesting conversation that they have, and something that I want to get you guys' thoughts about this, and this is why I love this show. what in Hannah's defense, I kind of understand where she's coming from. And in the greater scheme of things, yes, it's a show, but just talking about the reality of the situation, the Me Too movement, how a woman in Hannah's position would kind of feel like, I don't want to necessarily be used as a tool. I don't want my career to be, potentially taken away by me coming out and things of that nature. So there's that conflict and it hurts me to the bones when I see people always talk about, oh, why didn't this person speak up before? Or why are they waiting to this particular moment to do this or that? This episode and this show and Hannah's storyline in particular kind of shines a light on that situation that, again, there's more to it than just that situation. This person has to live with that trauma for the rest of their life, and they don't want that to define them. They don't want to be like Hannah said. She doesn't want to be used as like this poster child to be looked upon. And again, some people, men in the industry or other people in the industry, if she wants to look for a job in this situation, she might not get it because people might feel like she brings a certain baggage to the situation. So I really enjoyed that scene, and I love how the show dives into that psyche of someone in that position. Again, I want to know you all thoughts in the comments or what you're thinking about before we get to the Hannah stuff later on. But what did you think about that situation? Do you understand where Hannah's coming from? So I want to know what you all think in the comments below. From there, we see Chip gets a call about meeting Fred and clear out a schedule, and we see him having maybe he has a really kind of a heart-to-heart with his crew, because at that point, Chip's trying to do, operating the show, but then his assistant or, the close employee to him, Rena, tells him to go ahead and meet with Fred, and at that point, like I said, Chip kind of tells the crew how much he appreciates him because he knows his days at the morning show is numbered. So from there, we get the meeting. Hannah does eventually meet with Bradley. She texts her, says, I'll go ahead and meet you, and, Bradley immediately starts to talk about the Bradley situation or talk about the Mitch situation. And we get Hannah, she explains the situation. We get her reasoning on what she thought. Again, she looked up to Mitch. She was kind of in a vulnerable position. She was at Las Vegas during these shootings. So there's a lot of emotions going on. So she went ahead and went to his room, and as we know what happened a couple episodes ago when we get that Mitch kind of, flashback episode, we know what went down, and they, kind of relived that. And at that moment, that's where Hannah's reliving that tragic moment. Because again, if you notice, Hannah really hasn't had someone to confide to. She has a relationship with Claire, but she really hasn't talked to Claire about, she hasn't talked to Claire about the Mitch situation, nor has she talked to anyone outside of, telling Mitch what happened and obviously now telling Bradley. So there's a lot on her shoulders. And again, I feel so bad for Hannah because, again, I think a lot of people might take Mitch's side and be like, oh, they know. Again, even Mitch said it a couple episodes ago. Oh, you're an adult. You know what happened. That's no excuse still. And it bothers me that people kind of maybe take Mitch's side. Again, this is a show, but there are real people like Mitch, and some people taking that person's side, it just kind of baffles me. But again, to each his own. But I thought that was a really powerful moment, a really powerful scene, because again, Hannah confronts Bradley and tells her, I want to let this go. I want to just move on with my life. I don't want you to continue to keep asking me questions. I don't need help, because Bradley says, have you seeked out help? Have you talked to anyone? She says, I don't want it. I don't need it. But ultimately, we kind of know that it was something that she needed, and we'll talk about that a little bit later there. But, as an audience member, again, I think it's something that, we see Hannah needed someone to talk to. She didn't have anyone to talk to. And we saw the episode when they were in L.A. with the whole firestorm that she had a somewhat of a drug addiction. I don't know if there's something they're going to touch on in season 2, if that was something that was prior to the Mitch situation, or if that was something that sparked the drug addiction, the whole Mitch thing. So, but as the audience member, that she needs help. She needs someone there, and she didn't really have anyone to kind of confide to, which is very unfortunate for the character. And we're going to talk about her, what happens to her later in the episode here. But what we get from the rest of this episode is we see Alex and Fred meeting about Marlon. Alex is kind of processing everything, and she wants to kind of keep Chip on, but Fred flat out, denies that. And we get this really cool shot where, Bradley or Alex leaves Fred's office after they, agree that they're going to go ahead and let Bradley go and bring in Marlon. But we see Chip is meeting with Fred, Chip is meeting with Fred, and he comes up the escalator, and they see each other there, and Mitch and, Alex and Chip have a little moment there, and I thought that was a really cool scene. But we see Chip get fired by Fred. He tells him that Fred tells Chip that he was responsible for the toxic environment, and we know that's a lie. I mean, yes, Chip kind of had some information that he could have definitely exposed Mitch and Fred, but he was, kept everything under the wraps like a lot of the employees did at the morning show. But we see Chip really getting upset when Fred kind of goes in on him and makes it feel like he's responsible, and we get a really confrontational conversation between the two. And we see from that conversation, Chip leaves and immediately calls Bradley and says they got to get this ball rolling on Fred. We see Claire leave a voicemail trying to reach out to Hannah based on the conversation they had last when they had that confrontation about Yanko and Claire. She wants to apologize to Claire or to Hannah, but Hannah doesn't answer. We see Chip meeting with Bradley and tells her the news about being fired, and they have to move on with this story. We see them have kind of a back and forth, and they have a little explosive conversation there because Chip brings up because Bradley's like, oh, you just want to cover yourself and get Fred under, put him on the bus, and he's like, yeah, I want to do that, but we all have our kind of motives about what we want to do in this story, and they kind of have an explosive thing there, but they kind of apologize to each other, and at that moment he feels kind of we're seeing Bradley break down because she feels bad about pulling that story out of Hannah, and we'll talk about that here in a bit. But love this scene here where we get Corey confronts Mitch, and he kind of tells him that he's not a fan of him, and he better get his act together during this interview with Bradley and confess to what he did to Hannah and confess to his his behavior to the employees. And I thought that was a really powerful scene. And again, I really love Corey in this season. You thought that he was going to be a bad guy, but he really is trying to expose these people and is on the good team as far as Chip and Corey and Bradley. So I really enjoyed that scene there. Chip tells Rena about the plan to sneak Mitch in. She agrees to it. We see Claire. So this is the moment here. So we see Claire goes to Hannah's place after she doesn't answer the phone. She has some coffee for her. She makes her way into the building, and that's where we see, unfortunately, Hannah, overdosed. We saw, again, like I had mentioned earlier in the review, we see that Hannah did have a drug problem. We saw in L.A., well, not want to say a drug problem, but we saw that she was taking prescription drugs. Don't know, again, if it was prior to the Mitch situation or if that was what triggered it, the whole thing that happened in Las Vegas, but we see that she ODs, and, for a minute I was like, oh, I hope that she's alive, but unfortunately, Hannah does die, and this is a very sad moment. I got emotional in that moment because, again, she didn't really have anyone that she felt comfortable enough to tell this story to. And, again, her story about how she felt about Mitch, what she felt at that night, and how she felt kind of helpless, and then obviously going to Fred the next morning and how Fred gave her the promotion. And she really wanted to kind of move on, but then, again, that conversation that she has with Bradley really kind of sparks things. And we saw that she took the call earlier in the episode, and she told the LA person that she'll like to interview for the job. But I think that was Hannah kind of saying, she wanted to start a new life, but, this dark past and this dark tragedy really kind of consumed her and unfortunately was the cause of her death. So I'll be very interested to see how that storyline plays out. If we're going to have a family member from Hannah, maybe sue Fred or sue Bradley, who knows how that conversation can go. But I would really like to know if they explore that Hannah backstory more in regards to, again, was it an overdose? Was it an accidental overdose? They said there was no letter for suicide. I want to see what they do with this Hannah situation because, again, speaking of Hannah, thinking of Netflix shows, same name but different characters. But I really enjoyed the performance by Gugu Mbatha-Raw. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, I apologize. She's such a fantastic actress. I thought she was phenomenal in this season and was great in this role. And I feel so bad for that character. But again, I really want to know what they do with her storyline in season 2. So Fred tells the crew the next morning. We see Fred tells the crew that he fired Chip and he's introducing Marlon. And in the meantime, we see Claire tells Bradley about Hannah, and Hannah is just obviously shooken up, and she goes up in front of Marlon and tells the whole crew. And then we get the scene of everyone in the crew having their reactions about Hannah's death. We see Bradley finds out about, or Alex finds out about it, and we see Bradley calls Chip and tells him the interview's off. And we see Bradley blaming herself. We see in the next scene, Bradley talks to Alex about everything that was going to go down. She tells her that I was going to interview Mitch. We were going to do it behind your back. We were going to expose you, expose Fred, expose his network. But obviously, they're not going to do that because of Hannah's death. We see Alex is shook by this. Bradley walks out, and then she goes in the street, and we see, Alex confronts her, runs after her, and convinces her to stay after this random guy wants to take a selfie with Alex, and we see that she explodes on him. But, again, Alex convinces Bradley to come back in. We see that they run into Corey, and again, Alex, was like, okay, thank you so much, Bradley, for staying on with me. Let's go ahead and do the show. And we see Corey convinces, again, Bradley to stay and do this show and fight the fight and fight for Hannah because, she deserves justice. So from there, we see Chip goes to Mitch and tells him what happens, and Chip is obviously pissed and punches Mitch, and they kind of have a scuffle, have a fight there, and that's where we get the reveal that Chip was the one that leaked the information about Mitch to the Times, which was, that was the big reveal. We didn't know who did it, but we find out that it was Chip that did that, and we see him leave, and we see Mitch has a breakdown, and I don't know. At that moment, I don't know if it's Mitch breaking down due to the news of Hannah. I would imagine that has something to do with it, but also he's knowing that this might be the last thing that he can do. That was the last thing to kind of help his career. So it's a little bit of both, but I would love to know what you all thought was going on with Mitch at that moment. Chip leaves Alex a heartfelt message about, why he leaked the things to the Times, and it was all to protect her. Meanwhile, we see Marlon tells Alex he appreciates her professionalism, and Alex immediately throws water in his face, because he says, let's do this for Hannah, and obviously he doesn't know Hannah, so he has no right to say that, but she throws the water in his face, and literally within the last 5 minutes of the season, we see, Alex and Bradley go live. We see the show starts, the camera turns on, and Alex can't do it. She can't talk. She's walking around the studio. She's walking in front of the camera. She has a lot on her mind, and she just lets go. She tells Bradley, let's do this, and at the final moments of this season, they let everything out of the bag. So we see that they reveal everything about Hannah and Mitch. They reveal things about Fred. In the meantime, we're seeing this kind of, during that scene, we see Fred running to the studio. We see that they lock him out of the studio, and everyone's kind of smiling and kind of, happy that this story is finally getting revealed. And then next thing we know, and then, like I said, they tell the ugliness of the network and everything, and we see Chip is obviously, he doesn't know the news quite yet, but we see the last kind of second to last scene that they cut the network off, and then we see the last moment, we see Mitch in an empty house by himself, and it fades to black. So let's talk about the episode, and then we'll talk about my thoughts on the season and what I hope to see in season 2. So first and foremost, I thought this was a fantastic finale. It's very, very rare that a finale lives up to the episode before, because normally I watch a lot of TV. Normally the episode before the finale is typically a little bit more stronger, has a little bit more reveals, a little bit more things that happen, but this was a fantastic finale in my opinion. It wrapped up a lot of the storylines. Again, we get the stuff with Hannah that unfortunately wrapped up in a tragic situation. We see that, Mitch doesn't get his interview. We see that Bradley and, Bradley, and we'll talk about my thoughts on the season, but Bradley and Alex finally come together and do the reveals on this episode, and I thought that this episode was fantastic, top to bottom, the acting, the performances, the direction of this episode. I just really thought this was a strong finale for a really great season 1, and let's talk about the season 1 here. I thought this show was great. I don't know that many people other than myself and maybe 3 other people that review this on a week-to-week basis, but I really recommend you all checking out this show if you haven't already. I assume if you're watching this 17 minutes into my review that you've been watching this season, but I know this show hasn't gotten as much buzz, even though it got some nominations for the Golden Globes, but I really applaud this show because this is, again, I just saw Bombshell, which, you can see my review on Bombshell. I really enjoyed that movie, but I thought that one of my negatives was I wish we would have spent more time with these individuals, these women that were in this situation, a completely different situation, with the Fox and the Roger L thing. But, this show, the morning show, touches on that a little bit, touches on the stuff that happened with the, everything with the, that one network, Good Morning America, and it did its own little, they had its own little story. So I thought this show, the season 1 of this show was fantastic. It started off really kind of chaotic. We had a lot of stuff going on. Mitch getting fired, how Alex is dealing with that, introducing Bradley. How is Corey going to mix into this show? How is Chip going to mix in? And then as the season progresses, we meet Hannah, we meet Claire, we meet Yanko and all the different characters. Daniel want to become a lead and all that stuff. So I thought that they handled the stuff really well. The Fred situation, who's kind of a Roger Ailes in a sense. But I really, really, really enjoyed this season. I can't recommend you all checking out this entire season if you haven't already. I really enjoyed this first season 1 of The Morning Show. And let's talk about season 2 here. What now? What now with the network? What's going to happen with Fred? Is he going to fight back? Is he going to, sue these people because they're going on air, and this is his network still? What's going to happen with Chip? What's going to happen with Corey? Is he going to take over Fred's position? What now with Alex and Bradley? Are they going to now become closer and bond over this thing that they're going to reveal on the network, or that they are revealing? What's going to happen with Mitch? Is he going to want to pursue that, try to clear his name? Is he going to confess to everything? What's going to happen to his career? Will someone from Hannah's family sue the company? Will they sue Bradley? Will they come up from her? Are we going to learn more about her backstory? Again, her the overdose and her taking drugs. I hope that we get more from her story. And will more women speak up to Mitch, to Fred? What's going to happen with that? Very interesting stuff. Very excited for season 2 because, again, I thought season 1 was fantastic. I thought the finale was fantastic. And I really, really enjoyed this show. So that's my thoughts. I really appreciate you all watching this review, watching all my reviews of season 1 of this show. Again, I can't recommend it enough. I really enjoy the comments, the likes, the shares that you all have done on this reviews for the morning show for me. I really appreciate it. Even though this is the end of this show, I still review stuff. Again, for my movie fans, check out my review for Bombshell. Did my non-spoiler review for Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. Got some more shows I'm watching this weekend, like The Witcher, Servant, which is also on Apple TV+, so definitely keep an eye out for those reviews. Subscribe to my channel, hit that bell so you can stay up to date with all that content. Again, leave your thoughts below on what you thought of the season, the episode, and what you hope to see in Season 2. Follow me on my social media accounts. Thank you all for watching this review, and we'll see you in the next video.